Mics, I like mics. I gotta have a lot of mics. I wanna have a lot.
And now it's time for Mic du Jour.
Hi, it's Sylvia. If you love vintage mics, especially ribbons, you're going to love today's mic du jour. Today's mic du jour is the RCA Junior ribbon mic, and here it is right here. But there's another one. And there's another one. Okay, well, we have three vastly different juniors from RCA. Look at those beauties. The first one is model number MI4010, and that was introduced in 1935. Just to give you some perspective on what was happening in the country in 1935, we were in the middle of the Great Depression. There was a dust bowl in the Midwest, and a lot of people were migrating to the West Coast to find work in California. It was hard times for a lot of people. On the other hand, it was a very productive time. Dams were being built and bridges. The Golden Gate Bridge was built during this time in the early 30s. The 30s was also a big time for amateur radio. So the amateurs were individuals who would order parts out of a catalog and build their own transmitters and microphones and then transmit and receive signals from all over the world. It was really a boom time for amateurs, and it drove a market for inexpensive microphones because everybody wanted to get into it. As well, commercial radio was big, and this fellow, Major Bose, had the #1 program on commercial radio. And that microphone he's got there was the top of the line during that era. It was the RCA 44. So if you were going to have any microphone during this time, it would have been a 44 for broadcast or film. Here's a 44 right here, just so you can get familiar with it. It has a very recognizable profile. And I know that it has a lot of shielding here. It's a very quiet mic. It has a yoke that you can adjust the mic into different positions. It has rubber bushings, so it's shock mounted. And it was very expensive. And if you were to buy one of these 44s in 1935, you would have had to pay around $80, and now that doesn't sound like a lot today, but in fact, in today's dollars, 2020 dollars, that would be about $1,500. And in the middle of the Great Depression, people weren't dropping that kind of money for anything but the professional studios. So if you were an amateur or you just had a rehearsal room or a demo room, well, you needed a less expensive mic. RCA was very smart to come out with the Junior, and the Junior is actually a miniature 44 in some ways, right? It looks a lot like a 44, and I'll give you a close-up here. So if you were going to buy one of these in 1935, the MI4010, you would spend more in the range of $35, which could be about $600, $700 today. So, okay, it doesn't have as good of a shielding here. It's a little noisy. There's no rubber shock mount. It's got folded edges. There's screws on the top. It's kind of a tinker toy. And the emblem is stuck right on there. But it's a nice mic, and it actually sounds pretty good. It's a little noisy, but it sounds pretty good. Now, there were improvements made in the 4010, and that's our next Junior. That's this one right here. This one was model number 74B. And now take a look at the differences of this mic. The 74B has more of a molded grill, and it's rounded, and it has a metal strap that goes over the top with screws on either side. The emblem is actually cast into the body instead of attached. And the stand mount has a ball assembly, which was kind of a neat way of adjusting the mic into the position that you wanted it to go. Now this also is a good sounding mic, but I think the third Junior is the winner. This one came quite a bit later. But look at this Junior. It's much more rounded on the top. It still has the strapping with the screws on the side, but the grill is much more streamlined. And the body is actually tapered and not so boxy. It has all the goodness of a 44 sonically. It has extra shielding, so it's quiet. And it's just very handsome, isn't it? So like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, this one is just right. Well, I want to show you my setup here. I have a Focusrite ISA-1 mic preamplifier, and the mic is plugged into it, but I don't have phantom power turned on because I don't want to hurt the ribbon. Typically, you don't use phantom power when you're using a ribbon mic. And then I also, let me just move this out of the way, my Keith McMillan controller, and don't tell Keith what I'm actually using it for because I'm using it for video switching. And anyway, I love that thing. All right, well, in studying the directional response for this microphone, I find that it is a figure 8 or bidirectional microphone. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we're going to be able to hear the front of it, we'll be able to hear the back of it, but the sides, not so much. And I'll demonstrate that now. I'm wearing a lavalier. I'm going to turn down the lavalier, and I'm going to turn up the ribbon mic, and we'll listen to it. Here we go, turning down the lavalier. Turning up the ribbon mic. And let's take another look at it. All right. I do like the sound of this mic. Now I'm going to spin the mic so that you can hear the directional response of it and how it goes away on the side. So my voice, you can hear my voice now as I turn it. My voice goes away, and now I keep turning it, and then my voice comes back on the back. And it's interesting because the two sides sound a little bit different, don't they? Well, you can actually see that in the directional response diagram that they have. And take a look. So you can see the frequencies are different on each side. But wow, I do like this mic. It's just right. Okay, I think that's about it for this episode of Mic du Jour. And I truly hope you learned a little something new about the RCA Junior mic. Come visit me at my website, sylviamassy.com. You'll find stuff to watch and listen to and buy. And I'll be back for more episodes of Mic du Jour. Until then, I hope all your recordings are adventures. Bye-bye.
Mic du Jour is brought to you by your friends at these fine companies.
Yeah, 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 yeah.